Back here on Our Community, I'm now talking with U.S. Congressman TimWalberg. Welcome to Our Community, sir.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Tim.
All right. Well, before we have talked about a lot of different issues when you visited me earlier this year, and today we want to kind of continue our conversation on what's happening in Washington, because, you know, there's a lot of constituents out there that aren't so happy with what's going on in government. And, you know, a lot of people are out there in the media, the do-nothing Congress, we're not getting things done. But, you know, where do you really stand on those type of issues?
Well, people, you're absolutely right, Tim, and you've had an experience yourself in being in front of the people, and I applaud you for that. The people aren't happy. They're frustrated, they're worried, they're angry, they're depressed. Some are just giving up, and that should not be the opportunity in America. We're Americans. We go through tough times, we go through good times. But ultimately, the pendulum swings and we move forward. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that's going to be the case in the not-too-distant future. You mentioned the fact that the media talks about the do-nothing Congress. For a member of the House, that's a frustrating thing. Mm-hmm. The People's House, for whatever it's worth, has been working for the past 4 years in accomplishing things. Right now, we have close to 400 bills as of last week. Beginning last week, we had 384 bills over in the Senate that we had passed, most of them in a bipartisan fashion. 40 of them jobs bills alone. Then additional education bills for job training and the like. Health care reform bills, you name it. Mm-hmm. Sitting over in the Senate with no action. Not even taking it up for a hearing. And that's frustrating to see. The House has passed already this term 7 of the 13 appropriations bills. We've passed them out of the House. That's with Democrat and Republican debate going on, full debate, and then sending it generally in a bipartisan fashion to the Senate. So it's a do-nothing Senate, not a do-nothing House.
Right. Is it Harry Reid and his group that are the stalemates in all this? Or are they saying, hey, wait a second, we don't want to bring these bills up because that might force some of our Democratic Party to vote in a way that their constituents back in their home areas might not like? We've got midterms coming up.
Well, right now, I think there are a goodly number of Senator Reid's Democrat colleagues who would like to vote on some of those bills. They're taking the heat back in their district for not performing the way they ought to perform. They're taking the heat for having supported the president on Obamacare, on Dodd-Frank financial takeover of the United States financial markets. They've taken heat for a stimulus that didn't stimulate the economy, and all sorts of things. So a number of them would like to vote, but the president doesn't want to have Harry Reid vote. Harry Reid, I believe, is protecting the president from having to veto a bill. This president has vetoed only 2 bills in 6 years. Those 2 bills were non-controversial spending bills. We brought them right back, altered them, sent it to him, he signed them. Mm-hmm. The only president to have vetoed less bills than this president is Garfield. And Garfield died in office early. Right. So he didn't have a chance. And so we've had the majority leader in the Senate shielding this president from having to really roll up his sleeves and try to work with Congress as the Constitution indicates mm-hmm. they're supposed to. He leads, he has certain key responsibilities, commander-in-chief, but we're the ones that pass the laws. We write the laws and pass them. And then it's the responsibility of the executive to carry them out, unless, of course, he says, I can't support this, and then I veto it. Goes back to the House and Senate. We either override it or we change the bill and give him a chance to sign it again. That hasn't taken place. So a do-nothing Congress is really a do-nothing Senate. Mm-hmm. I believe at the behest of a president who wants to control the system and do more political things than actually move this country forward.
So is there anything that can be done at this point with our situation right now? Or are people going to say, well, October came and gone, we didn't get much done, and then we go into, let's say the Republicans do take over. Well, is there anything going to happen in November and December, or is we just going to wait till January?
Well, there's some things that will have to happen in November, December. One will be the continuing resolution for funding our government goes into December, but not further. So we have to do something. We have to get past at least the first of the year when the new Congress will take action. So that will take place. We're going to look at some tax extenders that help businesses. One of the bills we passed last week that dealt with jobs and job growth was an extender for the 179 provision, which gives help to businesses on bonus depreciation. It's something that they're asking for to help small businesses to have that 179. I've had small businesses from this district write me letters in the last several weeks saying, will you ultimately get the 179 completed? It's going to be a great help to us, and we have to determine what direction we go further. We need some certainty. We have passed that already, sent to Senate. They didn't do anything with it, so we repassed it this past week. So those things will take place in the lame duck. But depending on what the people say, and Tim, this is the important thing to catch, our governmental system is working as the founders of our country designed it. They designed it at the federal level to be very, very cumbersome, things to move slowly, so freedom could not be taken away quickly. Mm-hmm. And they also designed it so that when a country is unified, things will move well. When a country is split, which it is right now, deeply divided, that's why we have a Republican-controlled House, a Democrat-controlled Senate, and a president in the White House whose policies were repudiated in 2010, but he was reelected to a second term in 2012. That division is what's producing this right now, good, bad, or indifferent. But ultimately, the final tool that brings something into motion again is the electorate. At the ballot box, they will determine to a great degree if we continue on in a divided fashion with a House and Senate that are split, or if this time they at least move the Senate to a closer majority of the Republicans to the Democrats, so that at the very least, though a Democrat may sit in as the majority leader in the Senate, it probably won't be Harry Reid. He won't have the votes to continue on. Mm-hmm. And then say it's Joe Manchin from West Virginia, if he would be the leader. I think we could work as a Republican House, a Democrat Senate, work together to pass bills that none of us agree are perfect, but compromised in the good sense of the word. We can move it to the president and let him lead.
Well, it just seems that, there's got to be some things that start happening, and I know there's some things happening in Washington, D.C., taking a look at what's happening on your website, what's happening overall, talking about the reducing energy costs and promoting jobs. Let's talk a little bit about that and how that particular bill, I think it's H.R. 2, the American Energy Solutions for Lower Costs and More American Jobs Act. Talk to me a little bit about that, and how does that set up with the Keystone Pipeline?
Well, that bill was set up to pull back some bills' ideas that we've already sent over to the Senate, some as much as a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. Things like the Keystone Pipeline. We voted on that several times already, to authorize the Keystone Pipeline to be used, to be put in the ground, shovel-ready jobs that will provide over 20,000 jobs on the pipeline itself, ancillary job, hundreds of thousands of jobs. Plus, it promotes energy security in a environmentally sound way. The only one standing in the way of that is the President of the United States. So we came together last week, and in an overwhelmingly bipartisan fashion, we passed this bill that included the Keystone Pipeline, included the RAINS Act that says any regulation that's put on business that costs upwards of $100 million or more, Congress has to approve of that regulation, reining in government and the bureaucracy that controls our lives. That was passed. It was sent to the Senate. We'll see if they take it up. The Keystone Pipeline is the most up-to-date, environmentally sound, safe pipeline that we could put in, compared to the pipelines we have in the ground now running underneath us. I was out in North Dakota looking at the Bakken Reserve and the coal mining operations out there just a few weeks back. Amazing. 800 years of coal just in the Bismarck area. The Bakken Reserve that we haven't fully substantiated yet, but there's upwards of hundreds of years of petroleum and natural gas resources. Most of that petroleum now is being sent back on train tracks in huge tankers all across the United States. How smart is that when we could put it underground in a pipeline that's secure, that has monitors running inside of it and outside of it to make sure that fractures aren't taking place, leaks aren't taking place? Far different than the present pipelines. And yet, for environmentally radical purposes, our president thus far has not signed the Keystone Pipeline. And we could be bringing that crude to the refinery in Detroit, Marathon Oil Refinery, the most up-to-date new refinery that has been implemented in the United States in 30 years, or down to the Gulf Coast in Texas for refining down there. Canada would be sending this to us, along with what we have in North Dakota and other places. North America could grow in its ability to be totally independent from the Middle East if we wanted to. Why not do that? It makes all good sense. We passed that last week. That means, fortunately right now, Tim, because of what development and exploration and production has taken place on private lands, like the Bakken Reserve or the Marcellus shale sources here in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and even in Michigan, we have been capable of keeping those terrible gas prices from going higher and spiking rapidly due to what's going on with ISIS. Mm-hmm. Just think if we hadn't done that on private lands, what that would mean to us in the cost. If we could also open up the public lands, the government lands, to do exploration and development where appropriate, my gracious, independence would start to come.
Stay with us. We got more coming up with U.S. Congressman Tim Walberg.
Mancino's Pizza and Grinders. Nothing compares to freshly baked bread. Grinders piled high with meats and cheeses, or pizza with your favorite toppings. If you're looking for something on the lighter side, try any one of our delicious Mancino salads. Feed the whole family with Mancino's Family Deal. Get a large one-item pizza, a whole grinder, garlic bread with cheese, and a 2-liter a pop for only $22.
Nothing compares to the original Mancino's Pizzas and Grinders.
Hi, I'm Dean Bobilia, and the tradition continues at Bobilia Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Check out Motor Trend's Truck of the Year, the Ram 1500.
The first ever back-to-back champion, featuring a stunning profile and 25 miles per gallon.
Get your best deal backed up by fantastic service.
At Bobilia, we have Chrysler Master Certified Technicians. We can work on any make or model.
We also have the Mopar Express Lane. Oil changes while you wait, and the fourth one's free.
Bobilia Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram.
Back talking with U.S. Congressman Tim Walberg. And Congressman, before we left, we started talking about energy and about oil and the Keystone Pipeline. And, I would think that, with the crisis that we have with the ISIS terrorists over there, right, and the control that they are trying to obtain with all the oil fields, but yet our gas has not spiked here yet. And normally we'd be at $4.50 right now, or $4 right now,
or $5.
Yeah, and so where are you at with the energy that's being produced in our country? A lot of people say, well, we produce more oil than anybody. Why don't we just keep it here?
Well, we could do that, but we can also reduce the cost for us at the pump if we also export it, mm-hmm, as opposed to importing it, and that's the challenge we have. There is a purpose for us to be a leader not only in the world with what we're capable of doing here at home, but what we're capable of doing in promoting that globalism that works for us in a very positive way by being able to be partners with countries that will support us, will appreciate what we have, and provide resources from abroad to add the resources we have here.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the conversations that went on dealing with the terrorist crisis, yeah, and how Congress, the Senate, the President, are you guys all coming together to tackle this all?
Well, that's an example of what you were talking about earlier, of coming together. We did come together, and we came together strongly last week. The President gave a speech, said that because of what ISIL was doing and ISIS, that he needed authorization, or he wanted the authorization from Congress to train some of our allies coming from Syria, some of the fighting forces that would go against ISIL, as well as Iraq. With a new prime minister in Iraq now who is opening up to the Sunnis as well as the Shia, there is an opportunity for those good fighters that we've helped train, the Sunnis, to actually stand and fight and not run when ISIL intervenes. As we discussed that, I know in the House Republican conference, I don't know what went on in the Democrat conference, I wasn't there. But the issue was, though we believe that this is probably the best of the worst options that we have, we don't have the options that we had 3 years ago. We don't have the options that we had 1 year ago. We live in the present, and if the President has finally awakened to the fact that something needs to be done and he has to show leadership, we'll stand with him. And so we did that. We came together overwhelmingly both Democrats and Republicans, to say, Mr. President, we will authorize you to begin training, and we'll give you certain level of funding to train Syrian fighters and Iraqi fighters, and then to develop a coalition amongst allies in that region that we saw take place this morning in a sustained, powerful attack on ISIL headquarters that hopefully will have a real negative situation in their experience develop because of that. That was a good thing. Now, do we go further? In the bill last week, we gave authorization through December. We've got to come back in December and approve anything further. But before that takes place, this administration will have to report to us what's going on and the impact. It's not a carte blanche that we've given to him. And I think the American people want us to control what's going on and make sure the president doesn't only talk tough, and I'm glad to hear him talking tough right now, but will he act on it? And in the past, he's drawn lines in the sand and then let them float away. That can't happen now. We know that ISIS is coming after us. If we don't deal with them there in their sandbox with as much shock and awe and mayhem and death for them as our enemy, they're going to come here. I don't want that. Your listeners, your viewers don't want to see that happen. America is a place that we ought to be able to feel free and safe and secure. And so right now, when we have enemies that have told us their plans, and that includes coming here to the United States, we'd better do what's necessary to stop it.
I find it interesting that, instead of the United States being the Lone Ranger out there, that we've got other countries and Muslim countries that are participating in trying to thwart this problem that's out there.
As they ought to be. There are some Muslim countries that are still open to other religions, like Christianity and Judaism. And I've been in some of those countries. They are Muslim-controlled, but they have an openness. That's good. We don't mind that. But when you have countries that are totally closed to, for religious reasons, to Christianity, to Judaism, we've got problems. And that doesn't speak well for the future of that region. However, when Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Bahrain, let's see who else, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, last night joined with us. That said, they are starting to wake up to the fact that ISIL is an explosion waiting to happen in their sandbox that will affect their countries as well. I don't believe we can trust without verifying Saudi Arabia. We can't trust without verifying Qatar. We can't trust certainly without verifying the Syrian troops that we'll train. But for the good of our people and the good of that region that wants to now step up to ISIL, I think we need to take the risk to fight it there, fight it aggressively, and then evaluate how much further we go.
Congressman, thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. U.S. Congressman TimWalberg. Make sure you exercise your right and get out and vote in November. I'm Tim Hart, and you're watching Our Community.